Hello, I'm Karen Golden Oronte. I'm here with Living Histories, and I have the opportunity to speak with Genevieve Good. Hi, Genevieve, how are you?
I do nicely, thank you.
Good, good, good. Well, I normally would not mention this, but you recently celebrated a birthday. And may I ask you the details of that birthday?
Well, I turned 96, and I feel really biblical because the culture of this country has changed so since my youngest days that I hardly know it.
Well, in 96 years, you've observed a lot.
Well, I've lived in a very important time in history, I think, and saw so many changes in lifestyle that I hardly know my youth.
Well, you told me that you started summer here in Cohasset.
Yes.
At 375 Jerusalem Road.
Right.
With your family.
Right.
So that was how you spent your youth.
It was because my family traveled considerably, winter and summer too. Summer, we young ones traveled with them, and then finally my mother died in 1936. And my father looked for a home in Cohasset to which she could come. And that is how we came to Cohasset.
On a full-time basis? Or
No,
in
just
the
summer.
Uh-huh.
Just summer. I met my husband-to-be during the summers that we lived here because his family also came in the summertime. And after marrying, we decided to go back to Cohasset because all our friends were newly married and newly settling in, as it were. So that's how we originally came to Cohasset.
Well, you told me a pretty fascinating story when you were at your home with your family in 1936, when your mom had passed away. Your brother sent the family a telegram.
Oh, yes.
To look out the window.
Yes. It had happened that my sister was at school in Paris, and my father thought of a way to get her home quickly for the funeral. He got in touch with friends in Germany who got tickets for Celeste and put her on the plane and put her on the Hindenburg, and it came across the Atlantic in time for the funeral.
Wow.
My brother was jealous, and he wanted a trip before he married in that fall. And it was all arranged. We didn't know exactly when he was coming back, and we discovered when a telegram had arrived at the house one morning, just look north and you'll see me. So we all ran to the window and looked north, and there was the Hindenburg sitting on the horizon on its way down to its port in New Jersey.
Wow.
And that's how he made a round trip on it before he married.
It's interesting because when I looked up the Hindenburg, it only did 10 trips to America.
Yeah.
So that was an opportunity.
Yeah.
And it only went 85 miles an hour on average. So not like a plane today where it goes by so quickly. You had the opportunity to see the Hindenburg hover to New Jersey.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So
it was a marvelous sight, really, because it was the beginning of air service, really.
Yeah.
We didn't have airplanes to take us to Europe or any place.
You had the opportunity to school in Switzerland and Italy.
Yes.
So how did you get to Europe during those years?
We used the ship lines. The German ship line was the two ships, the Hindenburg and the
Was that the Bremen that you were on?
Bremen.
Okay.
Bremen, thank you. Bremen and Hindenburg. I mean, in the other line, you just mentioned it, or I did.
I don't remember.
The other boat was the now I'm getting mixed up with old age.
But you were on the Bremen. So when you were...
As a matter of fact, I must tell you something interesting about the Bremen. When you neared the United States, about a day and a half, they would tell you, if you want to, get up very early, about, say, 5 o'clock in the morning, which was early for me. We could go up on the deck, on the top deck, and they would shoot off a plane with the mail to get to New York 2 days before the boat would arrive. That was one way that the Germans were working on every angle that they could think of, while we sat in this country being so naive about what was going on in Europe.
So when you were in Europe, did you have any feelings of any sensation of what was going on around you pre-war?
Well, actually, we were dumb Americans, because my sister and I, after leaving school in Italy, went down into Yugoslavia and Romania and came back to Vienna. It was the same weekend that the Germans moved in on Vienna. And we walked out the hotel room, looked at the corner of the street. There was a bunch of German soldiers that we had never seen before, and went up to them, looked at them, went on our way, and traveled around the city into the Imperial House, etc. And then finally the hotel manager came to us and said, "You better get out of here. You better get out of here."
Wow.
And so we took the next train north to Berlin. Well, nothing was happening up in Berlin, except there were a mass of soldiers there. And we wondered, my sister and I, what was going on. It wasn't like this back home. We had never seen a soldier until the war.
But your parents must have been frightful of you and you and your sister might be.
They were the kind of people that would face any problem, and it would be all right.
Yeah.
So it was all right.
Did you communicate with your family at all while you were in Europe back?
Christmas time, I was in Gstaad in Switzerland, and I knew my father was going to call me. Finally, in the hotel, I got word that I should come to the telephone and receive a phone call from Boston, so I knew who it was. So I went to the phone, and the first thing I heard was Paris. This is the Paris operator. Hold it. This is the London operator. Hold it. This is the Boston operator. Hold it. And then I heard my father. And that was the way we could communicate.
Yeah.
And as well as send telegrams.
Wow. So ultimately, you came back to the States.
Oh, yes.
And you met your husband, Fred, in Cohasset.
Yes.
And then you married and moved.
Yes.
You lived here.
Yes. At 375 Jerusalem Road.
Got you.
That's where we first... no. I lived at 181 Atlantic Avenue
Okay.
when I was married. And that is right at the run where the water
bridges.
fills Little Harbor.
And you raised your children here.
Yes.
One of the things that I found very fascinating was the story of Cohasset in the 30s, or was it 30s?
Yes.
They had, which was very well known, were the horse shows.
Oh, they went on every summer. They were looked forward to, and people came from around the country to show their horses and participate. Even one from California.
Wow. CHS, Cohasset Horse Show.
Wonderful, wonderful times, those summers.
So then the war started. So that precluded the horse shows from continuing.
Exactly, because people, and I can't blame them, had always taken care of the horses, but now they found they could get more money if they worked in the shipyards. So it was the end of horse shows.
So the property where the horse show used to take place
Is now the music circus.
So so the music circus took over where the horse show was.
Yes.
And your husband, Fred,
Yes.
had
And John Hayes, and the Hayes family, and the Neer family, and oh goodness. Now this is where my brain escapes out the window, trying to remember names.
so they started this. It was a tent from the beginning. Then,
Always.
yeah.
But prior to that, there was a theater that participated in shows at the town hall. And it went from there to the music circus.
And you had the opportunity to meet some of the stars at the time.
Oh yes. We would entertain them on weekends or put them up at our homes. Zsa Zsa Gabor came to my home one evening. All my guests were on the porch, and they had been chattering. As soon as Zsa Zsa arrived in the driveway, dead silence. They acted like country bumpkins. They all turned and looked at her and stood there without saying a word. I remember that so well. Oh, that was funny. And we had Sound of Music, and the Baroness came down from Vermont, where she was living, and stayed with us for that weekend.
Wow.
And I remember putting her in a corner bedroom that the four-poster bed faced into the room. She said, "Please, do you mind if I put my head at the other end so I can look out the window and see the sea? It will remind me of my husband, who was a Navy man in Vienna, in Austria."
Wow.
So she did. She was a charming person. I remember Humphrey Bogart coming here as a nobody, just a young actor. Then, well, I won't say anything, unchristian.
Okay. So you had a funny story to say what the phone service was like when you were raising your children.
Oh, that I wish were back again, when you want to get people. We would call up the telephone operator, whom we knew very, very well, and say, "We need somebody for Friday night at, say, 5 o'clock. And lo and behold, she said, "I'll get you somebody." Then call back and say, "She'll be there at 5 o'clock, and take care of your children as long as you want."
And so is that how you called your neighbor? Through the phone operator?
Well, no, we could telephone
Okay.
and give the number to her. Well, yes, give the number to her and she would connect up.
Ah, interesting. Interesting. Well,
The war came along, and the government put up a cabin, literally, for about 10 men, soldiers. They were all settled into this place, which was just above our home, and not at 181, but at
the 375.
375 Jerusalem Road, because above there was nothing. There weren't any houses the way that house, what I meant was houses along the coast as there is today, as there are today. This was unseen, that house, because there weren't the trees, and now the buildup of property along there. So it was just an open stretch of rocks that they put this cabin on. And they were there to watch for German submarines.
Wow.
But I now find out that they saw nothing. I don't know whether they didn't see anything or whether they just couldn't see something because of the weather or the fog or whatever. I don't know. But that was interesting to have them come, because I know that one of the soldiers got stuck in the Battle of the Bulge, which happened in Europe at the end of the war, when the Americans were pushing east, and the Germans suddenly got a hold of a lot of men to fight, which they didn't have before. Well, they were all boys. But in the Battle of the Bulge, my friend went to sleep by a tree and woke up looking at a Nazi soldier.
Wow.
So he was out of the war for a few months before the real end of it.
So you have some pretty spectacular photographs here. This is the one of your first flight. I don't know if we can see that, but we can scan
Flights
that
were
in
just starting after Lindbergh had paved the way, as it were. And the French had set up a flight from Paris to London. And this is a picture of us, my parents and my sister and me, about to board this airplane, which would be considered an orange box today. It was so primitive, but we didn't think
Very
that.
square, very rectangular.
We didn't
very
think
angular.
that at all.
Yeah.
We didn't know any differently.
And here's another one of your sister and your father.
She spent the war with the Red Sox on one of the islands, and I've forgotten it, off the Atlantic coast. They were watching for the Japanese. And she had just arrived home. My husband had just shed his uniform, and we were meeting up at 2500. My father and my sister-in-law and back, and my two children.
Wow.
And this was one of the trips that my father took to Egypt, because they had just discovered King Tut's tomb, and everybody wanted to get to Africa to see King Tut's tomb, including my parents. And this is a picture of what it looked like then after discovering that tomb.
Wow. Fascinating.
They dressed as if they were not in the desert, but
they have big, heavy coats
on a street in Boston.
Yes.
In wintertime.
Yes. And everybody else has got their
Well, I mean,
light
they're
white
all
caftans.
Arabs
Yeah.
in much cooler clothing. Let me see if I, and then that is three. And one of my passions was golf, and that was the championship team.
Of which
the
you
golf
remember.
club.
Right front and center.
What is the date?
1971.
71, okay.
Yep.
That's That's right.
Yeah. And here you are, right in center.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, Genevieve, this has really been a treat to have you tell your stories.
Hold forth.
Yes, it's really been wonderful. I've enjoyed listening to your stories. You've been
Thank
in
you.
Cohasset for a long time,
Yes.
and it's wonderful to hear what you have to say about looking at these photographs of what your home
I
was
can't
like.
believe it's the same town today.
I know. We should take a
But
little
it
before and
isn't.
after photograph of what it looks like today.
Exactly, exactly. Because this area is solidly built up and houses
there's
extend
just
back
3 homes in view.
away from
Yeah.
away from the Jerusalem Road. It's unbelievable how this place has changed.
Well, change is okay. And I think it's still a pretty wonderful place to live. Don't you agree?
I wouldn't live anyplace else. I love to travel,
Yeah,
but I wouldn't move away from home.
yeah.
That is
home.
Cohasset.
That is.
Yes.
Well, Genevieve, thanks again. And
My
I
pleasure.
appreciate your coming by on this extremely rainy day. And I look forward to seeing you on the streets of Cohasset.
Thank you. I don't know how much longer. It depends on the Lord. I depend on Him totally. And I appreciate your reliance on me to tell you something about way, way, way ago.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.